Hey, brother.
Hey, brother.
So the Thanksgiving coming up, I've been thinking about planes, trains, and automobiles,
Yeah, the only
and
Thanksgiving movie.
yeah, the only thing it's
Yeah.
really the only Thanksgiving movie, um, and I wanted to see if we could come up with a sequel. They'll have those like sequels that come like 30, 40 years later.
Yeah.
Do you think
This
we'd be able to write a
is
sequel to this?
I mean, you always can write a sequel as it turns out. you know?
Yeah,
Cuz
yeah,
I've thought like Titanic all the way up to like number 15 or 16. Um so you can always keep making sequels.
yeah,
The trick is making it so it's like good and watchable. And
yeah.
there's like
Watchable's the trick.
yeah, there's two approaches.
Okay,
One approach is something like you take Steve Martin and he was good friends with Dale Griffin. That's the name of John Candy's character.
okay,
John Candy is of course gone now, so you can't use John
yes,
Candy. So you have John Candy's character got remarried at some point, and they'd
okay,
come over for Thanksgiving, and you pull the whole CGI Tarkin where you have John Candy on screen for like some flashback, uh,
okay, yeah.
and they had a kid,
All right,
John Candy and his new wife, and
yeah,
now John Candy and the new wife maybe like are gone,
okay,
but the
yeah,
kid's still there, and so Steve Martin now has to go and get John Candy's kid
yeah.
and bring them back for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And there is like now, and you could pull a what's it called too, where you don't name it planes, trains, and automobiles. You name it like boats, you know,
Yeah.
segways, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and long
I
distance
get you.
running. Just like you kind of do, you kind of yeah, you do one of those where you're like switching it to like now these are the different forms of travel. Like it's
Yeah.
boats, Ubers, and running shoes. It's that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's one way you do it.
Okay.
The other way you do it is you just make a brand new Thanksgiving planes, trains, and automobiles with
Yeah.
completely new characters, and you just make a whole new movie. And it's planes, trains, and automobiles. It's a comedy. Maybe it has some inspiration from the original,
Yeah.
but it's a totally different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I am leaning toward the latter.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
just because, like, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. As much as I'd love to see Steve Martin in the
hmm
movie again,
hmm
I mean, it's sort of like Vacation, where it's supposed to be like their kids. It's supposed to be Rusty and his
Yeah.
family.
Yes.
And then I don't know, maybe there's a cameo for Steve Martin. And they
Yeah.
like finally make it to their house. It could even still be his house that they're trying to make it to for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So it's like we see him at the end because they get to the house at the end.
hmm
But yeah, I do kind of like the idea of it being a different group of people. It could be their kids if we
Okay.
wanted to go that route, where it's like
Yeah.
Steve Martin's kid and John Candy's kid.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we stray
hmm
far enough away from the original
Yeah.
that it maybe doesn't feel like a rehash.
hmm
Um, but I think that you can do it. I think it could be done and made really entertaining
Yeah.
because Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis
Yes.
is basically Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Like it's basically a remake,
Yeah.
and it's
Yes.
really good.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So
So
you
I think it could be
can,
done.
yeah, you can take something like a Mad 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 World that was very good, and then make Rat Race,
Rat Race, yes.
which is basically the exact same movie. You can do that.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
you
all
can
just different
take.
characters.
Yeah, you can take an old idea and remake it, and you can make it good. And I think you could do the same thing with boats, totes, and ropes. I don't know. I don't know what the forms of
Yeah.
traveling would be, but I kind of like the idea that it's Steve Martin's kid gosh, and Dale Griffin's kid. I don't know why John Candy's name's jumping out of my head. I kind of like the
Yeah.
idea that it's their kids.
Yeah.
It's their
Yeah.
kids. So basically, like they yeah, they have to meet up. Maybe they don't even know each other, but they have to meet up because this is the first year for the kid that his
Yeah, his parents
mom
are
and
gone.
dad aren't there anymore. So
Yeah.
Steve
Yeah.
Martin's like, hey, old friends of the family, you can come to our Thanksgiving. You just, like meet up. You can meet up with my son,
Yeah. Yeah.
Bradford, Ted McGillicuddy. No,
Ted McGillicuddy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So then, yeah. So now they kind of have like their meet, and they could even meet kind of in the same way that they met in the original movie, which is like an unfortunate meet where
Yeah.
maybe John Candy's son like steals the Uber or something like that.
Yeah.
Accidentally steals the Uber, and he's like, "You stole my
This
Uber,"
movie.
and he's like, "No, I
Yeah.
didn't." And then he's
Yeah.
looking and he's all, "Oh yeah, this isn't my driver. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
did steal your Uber," Um,
Isn't
or
that
then like,
funny?
and then yeah, he can be like, how do our parents even know each other? you know
Yeah.
and he's like,
Yeah.
well, it turns out that like a long time ago, and John Candy's kid's kind of a talker, you know
Yeah.
and Steve Martin's kid is just like, I don't care anymore, like stop
Yeah.
telling the story. And he just keeps telling the story.
There is a way. I don't
Okay.
know if we'd want to go down this route or if it would change it too much, but if one of them is a daughter,
Okay.
um, did we want to try and like have a romance element at all?
Oh, yeah, like at the end, is there a romance that happens?
Yeah, like it's Steve Martin's daughter
Yeah.
and John Candy's, son
Son.
is
Yeah.
like John Candy, and
Yeah.
he's kind of like, not much when you first look at him, but like,
Yeah.
hey, he's the genuine article.
Yeah.
So it's like the more you get to know him, like, hey, there's actually something there. He's a good man,
Yeah.
and there's something kind of attractive about that. I don't know. I mean, like, cause then that does also add to the element, like it
Yeah.
adds not just the romance element, but also like if they have Thanksgiving dinner with Steve Martin
Yeah.
and he sees there's an attraction there,
Yeah.
then like it might kind of like make his skin crawl a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's. I think it takes. I think it shifts the movie too much.
What's the movie?
It shifts it too much
It shifts it. Okay. Okay.
in a direction. I don't know. Yeah. I think, I mean, it's hard for me to see how to make that work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay. I mean, it would change it. It would change it a lot.
Yeah.
It'd make it a very different movie.
Yes.
It's just, it's a direction that's possible to go into.
It's possible. It's possible to
Yeah.
go in. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe it wouldn't feel like it wouldn't be. I don't know. It's hard to say because Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was John Hughes.
Yeah.
And while it was kind of a different dynamic in terms of like how characters interact with each other, John Hughes was also um, pretty well known for doing like kind of innocent love and doing
Yeah.
like love stories where like it would still feel you could still make it feel like a John Hughes movie.
Should it feel like
Um,
a John Hughes movie?
you, could it or should it?
Should it? Should it feel like a John
um,
Hughes? Because I mean,
I mean,
I would
if
try
the
and make it
goal
feel like a
was
John Hughes movie.
yeah, I mean if the goal was to make it feel like a sequel,
Yeah.
then I think that you'd have to um, not like copy John Hughes style, but like stay
Yeah.
true to it. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of um, do justice to it. I think it's kind of the same as like using anybody else's source material. You got to stay true to the source material. I
Yeah.
think along those same lines, it's like you have to kind of stay true to his style. It should feel like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yes. Yeah. I
So
think
yeah,
I think I don't know. For me, when I think of it, I do think of it as two guys.
okay,
Same
yeah.
as like the first one. It's two guys. It's like, and it's
It
just
wouldn't
those.
feel like the
Yeah,
same. It wouldn't feel like a sequel.
and it's the mishaps. It's Steve Martin's
Yeah,
son trips over uh, John Candy's son's bag, and then because of that, like he misses. They like John Candy's son gets in the Uber and is waiting for him. Is like, I don't know where he is. Maybe he already went ahead. Let's just head to the thing. And the Uber
yeah,
takes off while he's heading there, and he's just like, you know,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
still don't know who each other are because they're supposed to meet in the Uber, and then he ends
yeah.
up meeting now they're at the the plane station together,
The harbor.
and they find out who each other are, and it's like you have
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So it's like, but I feel like you can, and then you have that where like throughout the whole thing, Steve Martin is the guy basically who has the money, and John Candy is the guy who's got the connections, and that's
yeah,
why they work like they're a team because it's like the situation keeps preventing Steve Martin from going anywhere, and then John Candy, is kind of like relying on him to pay for stuff.
yeah, yeah. It's like they end up needing each other.
Yeah.
They're forced to be with each other.
Yes. What age are they? Are they college?
See that? Yeah,
Is
I
that
don't
too,
know.
or is
I
that too
don't know.
young, or is he an
I think it's
adult?
too
Like,
young. I think that they need to be old enough that family is still the most important thing for Thanksgiving.
yeah,
And when you're of a certain age, when you're a little younger, you don't like you're kind of glad to be away from family for a little bit, you know?
yeah, yeah,
So it's like you kind of need to get past that age where like you think you know better than everybody else and you think you know better than your parents. And then
yeah,
you start realizing like I'm getting older. I was wrong about a lot of stupid stuff because I was a kid, whatever, 20 something, not a kid.
yeah,
But it's like, hey, my parents are right and family is important. Like you get to that age, you know?
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think that they need to be a little bit on the older side.
yeah. So they got to be older. They got to be married, um,
Yeah,
or at least one of them does. They need to have kids, or at least one of them does.
yeah,
Then, if you wanted to have a cameo, you could have Steve Martin as like the the dad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Then, yeah. Um. But yeah, it would be pretty like similar to the original in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah. It would just have to be, as far as like scenarios go,
Yeah.
it's almost like sketch comedy. Like we can write scenarios,
Yeah.
and as long as we're not like ripping straight from the original film, because like I think that what some people fail to realize with writing
Yeah.
is that like the idea itself could be whatever. It doesn't even matter what the idea is.
Yeah.
Um, we could come up with like 20, 30 different ideas for something that would be funny that would
Hmm.
happen in a movie like this. And if we end up using 5 of them, the other 25 that we didn't use, we can use those in other movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the scenarios aren't like they're not crazy difficult to come up with if you're like training your brain to come up with ideas. Then it's like yeah, like we can come up with ideas that would work for this, and it doesn't need to feel like we're just ripping it directly from the original. It'll feel fresh. We can make that happen.
Yeah. 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 I think. I mean, unless the idea is something crazy like everyone's a werewolf except for one dude. No. Which was a great idea.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
There's
mean,
only one guy who's not a werewolf, and everybody else turns into a werewolf. Great
yeah,
idea.
a fun idea,
Should have been a
definitely.
should it should have been a bad idea, but it actually turned out to be a great idea. But yeah, I think this is the same thing where it's yeah, it's a simple idea. It's like two guys are just trying to get
Yeah,
home, and they
yeah,
can't. They're total opposites.
yeah,
So like, Steve Martin's son has to be the like kind of preppy, um, stick up his butt
yeah,
type of guy, and the
yeah,
other guy's got to be the casual, relaxed, doesn't really understand social cues, isn't
yeah,
really getting, boundaries aren't really a thing for him, and
yeah, yeah,
he's a little bit more blue collar
yeah,
than Steve Martin's son can handle.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Is
I
it?
think it works. What's interesting though is because it's not a very complex idea.
Yeah.
Um, I don't feel like there's a lot of specifics that we really need to kind of come up with because it really is just a matter of like going through the motions, like setting
Yeah.
a foundation and then hitting
Yeah.
the beats.
Do you? How do you? Here's my question though.
Yeah.
Do you try and? I wouldn't say like reproduce, but kind of mirror in a way. Do you mirror the scene in some form or fashion where they're driving the wrong way on the freeway? You know what I mean? That scene is so brilliant. Because there's people in the car next to him like, you're going the wrong way. How do they know
Yeah.
which way we're going? Yeah, how do you know
Yeah.
which way we're going? And Steve
Yeah.
Martin's
Yeah.
slowly figuring it out. Like, wait a second.
Yeah.
And then
I
they're going in between the two semi trucks.
yeah.
They're
It's like
going,
sparking on
yeah.
either side.
And then it flashes and it shows Steve Martin as a skeleton. Like he's so scared. It's just brilliant imagery. It makes
Yeah.
so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I miss that. Movies don't really do that anymore. I miss that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, you got to do a scene that like feels like it, but
Yeah.
but yeah, what is it? Is there something that you could even do that wouldn't just feel like you're ripping it from the
that's
original?
yeah, I think you could do I mean, you could do like a twin. They're on like a jet ski. You know, they're on a jet ski and they end up
That's
going
the boats.
and they end up going in between two boats. You know, or
Yeah, like the
they're
Last
on
Crusade.
or they're going down river like on a boat, like in a canoe. You know,
Yeah,
then like they're just kind of like relaxing or chilling, and there's somebody on the shore like yelling something to them.
yeah,
Like get on shore, and they're like, we
yeah,
know you're on shore. Like, what are you talking about? And they go down like a waterfall and get stuck between two rocks in the
yeah,
waterfall. And they're sliding down like now, because it's like this fast into slow, kind of like, ah, and then like slow, like, and there's sparks coming off. And the boat's like ripping itself. You could still do sparks. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
Sparks coming off. It's a metallic rock and a metallic boat. Sparks coming off, You show the skeleton
Yeah.
like while they're like going down the thing, and then like they drop again.
Yeah, I mean, the point is,
Yeah.
I don't know about
Yeah.
that specifically.
Well, that's a great one. So Indiana Jones.
Yeah, but they did that in Indiana Jones. They went between two boats. In the Last Crusade. Yeah, no, I don't. I don't know. I feel like I have to put more thought into it before
Yeah.
like landing on a thing that's like, all right, what is that scene? Um, because I am one of those where I worry about it being too similar to the original, and it's like, okay, it should feel like it without it being, like, I guess you should be separated enough from it that you won't be like, oh, it's the exact same scene.
Right. Yeah.
but like it will feel like planes, trains, and automobiles. So it's like, all right, what is that? And I don't know. I think I'd need more time to
Yeah.
actually sit and come up with that scene, whatever that is.
It is. The tricky thing I will say is this, because what you're doing when you're coming up with a sequel like this, or
Yeah,
any sequel really,
yeah,
is you're almost using, like, all the good stuff was already put in the first movie. And now
yeah.
you're thinking of, like,
It's
what
like the
else
B
can get
side.
added. Yeah. What else can get added that the movie
Yeah,
didn't do? Like, if they actually made a second one like a couple years later, it would
yeah,
just be all the stuff that got thrown out,
yeah,
or that
yeah,
you're just churning through stuff to come up with different sticks, but it's like they already used all the good stuff.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's when like you got to get down to when a scene works. It's like, okay, what was the core of the scene? I feel like what's so funny about that scene is that they're kind of sharing a moment with each other. It's like
Yeah.
up to that point, Steve Martin's like really frustrated with John Candy, but he doesn't know that they're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
So when the guy is like yelling at them, and he's like, "How does he know that we're like going the wrong
Yeah.
way?" Steve Martin's like, "Yeah," like, and it's
Yeah.
like the first time they're kind of sharing a moment with each other.
Yeah.
So it's like it could be compared to Dumb and Dumber
Yeah.
when they're at the bonfire, when they're at the fire, and he's like, "I'm freezing, like my hands are freezing," and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, here, you can use my gloves."
Yeah.
Like,
Because he's wearing
it's
two
like kind of
gloves.
this, yeah, it's kind of the
Yeah.
same thing where it's
Yeah.
like Jeff Daniels is trying to share a moment with Jim Carrey, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm freezing," and like he's probably freezing too, and then
Yeah.
realizes right afterward, like, "No, my hands are getting a little sweaty because I
Yeah.
have two pairs of gloves on." So it's like that's the same kind of core, the same kind of
Yeah.
feeling as like that scene. So it'd be something like that.
Yeah. The other really famous scene is the one where he goes to the rental car and it's not there, and
Yeah,
then he goes back to the lady and he just starts cursing like nonstop every single
yeah,
sentence. And she's like, "Where's your rental agreement?" And he's like, "I threw it away."
yeah.
Yeah. You got to have something like that in there, right?
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's like, you start with, the scene that's like a parallel to that scene, and then you
Yeah.
start thinking like, okay, do I want to imitate the scene, or do I want to get down to the core of like what made it funny?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, for that in particular, it's just like I don't really know. I don't really
Yeah.
know.
Well, you'd have to set your mind to, we're going to put this guy through the ringer to the
Yeah,
point where he's going to come across a situation
yeah,
where now he gets to talk to a human being who's forced to give him customer service.
yeah,
And so he's going to feel like he can, just trash this person. It's
yeah,
like, and when you think about it, obviously it's not this person's fault that the car wasn't there. She's not the one parking the cars,
yeah,
but it's like, we've all been there where we've had bad experiences with stuff,
yeah,
and we needed someone to blame and yell at. It
yeah,
doesn't it doesn't mean you should, but the movie vicariously allows you to do it because he's doing it
yeah,
for us. But
yeah.
then, she ends up winning in the end because it's great
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple enough idea that I feel like
Yeah.
if we really sat and thought about it, we could probably come up with some
Yeah.
scenarios that, that mimic the original without it feeling like it's just ripping it straight from it.
Should there be a Planes, Trains, and Automobile sequel, or should there not
No.
be one? Yeah, I'm more on the side of there shouldn't be one. I think, however, I'm not opposed to it. Like there's certain movies
Yeah.
that I feel like you couldn't get me to write it if you put a gun to my head
No. Yeah. Yeah.
because
It doesn't hit that like. I get what you mean, and
yeah,
yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Where if I were to hear like, oh, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles 2 is coming out,
yeah,
it wouldn't bother me,
yeah,
but like it would bother me if they were gonna make like a Ferris Bueller reboot.
yeah,
You know, like there, I don't know. There's some movies that feel almost like sacred, and it's
yes,
like, don't mess that up, please.
yeah,
It's like whatever you're gonna do, it's gonna mess it up. But yeah, I don't really feel that way with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I still don't think they should, but
yeah,
something like Due Date is like a really good example because it's very much Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and it was still like really very enjoyable. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's doable, but for a lot of these films, what I feel like makes them so special is the dynamic between the two characters. Like,
yeah,
sure, it was a great script, but then it's also like it was Steve Martin and John Candy. And along those same lines, if they were to make a Due Date sequel and it didn't have Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis in it, I wouldn't want to watch it.
yeah.
All right, well, we're gonna move on to a movie that we need. We were talking about video games. You're a gamer. Some people might know you from from some of your gaming, and we need a video game movie.
Yeah,
And we were talking about some movies like, I mean, there's been so few good video game movies.
yeah. The
So we were talking
rec-
specifically about like video games that need a good
yeah.
storytelling.
Well, recently there's been a couple good video game movies with Sonic and Mario,
Yeah,
which are video
yeah,
game movies, and they've been good.
yeah,
Um, but then there's been movies like Doom with The Rock that people have kind of not liked.
right.
Yeah, I personally I like the movie. I recognize though that it's not good, and I don't suggest it to anyone.
Yeah,
Like yeah, like I can tell like, oh, I enjoy this because it's tickling, whatever, something for me.
that Doom funny bone, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um,
that's not something you can suggest to people because you also realize like there's nothing really great about it that anyone else is gonna like.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Um, I can't think of any
si-
like aside from the two you mentioned, aside from
yeah.
Sonic and Mario, I can't think of one that
Silent
I would
Hill.
recommend. Yeah,
Now that's
Silent
another
Hill was
one.
good.
It's super. That's another one that for people is hit or miss though. I like it,
Yeah, I
but
like it.
I don't know if I would suggest it to everybody.
I never played the game.
Yeah, I've played
That might
I've
be why
played
I
one.
liked it.
Yeah, I played one of the games though. I played one of the games and then I saw the movie and I still like the movie. So,
Okay.
but I like the feel of it. It's got its own feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Um,
very different.
but for the most part, yeah, there aren't. They tried doing a World of Warcraft movie. It wasn't very good. It's watchable,
Yeah.
but it's not great. Um,
I would like to see a Zelda movie. Like done
yeah,
properly, I feel like that could be pretty cool, pretty hardcore.
yeah, yeah. I mean, my pick, if there's like, what's the movie that they should make is Morrowind.
Yeah,
Make a
Morrowind,
make a Lord of the Rings 3 movie, 3 hours long
just
each.
epic.
Morrowind, yeah,
Yeah,
and just go to freaking town on it. And because the lore in Morrowind is 10 times the lore in any of the other Elder Scrolls games. It's so much
yeah,
more complicated. Um, it's so much more intelligent. It's
yeah,
so much more
yeah,
philosophical. It's so much more it's like diverse in like if you ask one character what happened, they say one thing, and if you ask another character what happened, they say another thing.
yeah,
And then you can also talk to people who were there at the time, like thousands of years ago or whatever it was, and they
yeah,
have different stories that benefit them. They're telling it from their perspective of how they think it went, and they
Yeah.
might be lying. And you're like,
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know
like make
which way to
themselves look
go.
better.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant the game's brilliant because it's like there's like a prophecy, and then you go into this cave and you meet the other people that could have fulfilled the prophecy but failed.
Yeah.
And I was playing the game with my friend, and he never completed the main mission. And I'm like, you're one of the failed Neravars. You're one of the failed prophecy people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't think that was cool. And I thought it was so cool that I was like, I was one of the prophecy people that actually completed the thing, and he was one of the prophecy people who didn't complete it outside
Yeah.
of the game.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
inside the game, there's the people there. It just was, yeah, it was like, it's bafflingly brilliant
Yeah.
the way the game is structured and all the weirdness of it too. And I think it would make a really good movie.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and
agree with you. I don't think it could be done in a single movie though.
yeah, I don't think it should be done in a single movie.
Yeah. To really do it justice, I think you do have to flesh out like the
Yeah,
whole story and flesh out the lore, and that does take more than one movie for Morrowind in particular. Um, so that it brings up a good point. I wanted to ask if when you said Morrowind, I was like,
yeah.
okay, are you saying the Elder Scrolls? Like, do you want to get into Oblivion, Skyrim, or like you just want to do the movie about Morrowind because like that story is so good that it deserves its own movie?
I'm just saying Morrowind.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I think the other games are great. Uh, they're but yeah, they're not. They don't go into the same level of depth that Morrowind does,
yeah,
and there isn't. Morrowind has that same thing that like Doctor Zhivago or Lawrence of Arabia does, where you feel like you're grinding through and you're just traveling through the desert,
yeah,
trying to get to the other side, desperate
yeah,
without getting killed, and it's like such a journey that even when they're like, hey, you're in the city and we want you to travel across the lands to this one cave where you can go in there and kill a ghost and take the bow from him and bring it back, and you're like, okay, and you go out and you're traveling and you're getting attacked by stuff and you're almost
yeah,
getting killed, and like every fight is like so dramatic because you're
yeah,
so weak and pathetic when you're playing the game.
yeah,
And yeah, and it's like, and then you finally find this thing after like an hour or two of searching
yeah.
because it's super hard to find stuff because there's no way, there isn't like a map marker. You're actually like
No,
looking at an actual map trying to figure out like what cave are they talking about, and you're like reading the
yeah,
directions that are they're all
yeah.
janky.
That is
It's
something like it's open world, and they'll give you directions like the third rock.
yeah.
You take a right,
Yeah,
and then you'll see a door, and then you see like the third rock, and you take a right, and there's a door here and a door there and a
yeah.
cave over there, and you're like, wait, like which cave are they talking about? Like, was that the third rock or the fourth rock? Um, and yeah, like it does. What's kind of like fun about it too is like I feel like the map was kind of hand drawn almost
Yes.
and was like slightly off, as if it were hand drawn instead of just like being digitally like exact like a cartographer, using
Yeah.
radar. So it was kind of like as if somebody in the time was like painting, like there's a rock here and it's like a little bit up here and
Yeah.
the rock is actually down here, and
Yeah.
it's like, hey, there's little like imperfections in the map because like, it's supposed to be like someone just drew it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant game.
very different experience playing that game.
Yeah, it's the story's pretty. I think it starts out pretty typical where like you're just a prisoner coming in on a ship,
Yeah.
then you're born to like uncertain parents. You don't
Yeah.
really know who your parents are, and yeah, you're just starting out, and you're bare bones. You don't have any skills or
Yeah.
really anything. Then you're just thrust into the world,
Yeah.
and you're trying to find your way through it. And yeah, I do think, yeah, if they follow the game and kind of the more interesting aspects of the game,
Hmm.
uh, you could build a movie around that
Yeah.
pretty easily. That's pretty interesting and entertaining, and and it would make people kind of question at the end, like if you did the right thing or not.
Yeah.
And, and there's like, yeah, there's just weird the whole yeah. There's all these weird things in it too, where like you go into the game and there's a part where you can talk to a dwarf, the last
Yeah.
dwarf on and he's like living in some like mine shaft with all the like people who have like corpus, which is basically like leprosy, turns people into like zombies.
Yeah.
And you'll have conversations with him about like what happened to the dwarves, and like no one really knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just it's a fascinating game world. And
Yeah.
I think as the Elder Scrolls have gone on with Oblivion and Skyrim, the lore has gotten simpler.
Yeah. I was
Is a
gonna
nice
say
way of
it's more
putting it.
simplified.
Yeah, the lore got a lot simpler.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's something. It was a very different experience for me playing Morrowind than any other game, any other open world, any other RPG. Um,
yeah,
and I can say honestly that like what I'd find myself doing in Morrowind, which I've never done anywhere else, is there would be like a library, and I would be going through the books in the library and reading them,
yeah,
and I'd spend like an hour or 2 hours like reading through these digital books inside of a library inside of the game because like a bunch of it is like lore
yeah,
or like stories or whatever, and it was interesting, like they were well written, like they weren't just place fillers.
yeah,
So yeah, like there's a ton of material just in that game, in that world, that you could definitely kind of pull from, and just make definitely a trilogy.
yeah. I think so. I think there's a lot to it. And I think it's I don't really know why they haven't tried to make a Morrowind movie yet.
I mean, I think it would be a big undertaking,
Yeah,
and I hate to say it, but I feel like if they were to make an Elder Scrolls movie, they would probably try and do a Skyrim movie, because
yeah,
like what they're gonna do is they're not gonna go for the movie that has, or they're not gonna go for the game that has the um, best or most complex story. They're gonna go for the game that made the most money.
yeah, yeah,
And the story might not be as good, um, but it's like they were willing to take a chance at funding the crap out of a Lord of the Rings movie because there's a huge following for Lord of the Rings, and so they felt like, well, there's a built-in audience, and we're going to get our money back. Morrowind is, I think, just obscure enough that I don't think that they're brave enough to do it.
yeah. Well, I think what happened
Bunch of
was
babies.
the World of Warcraft movie. I think they may have lost money on it. Either that or they didn't make enough on it.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of companies looked at that and they were like, okay, like you've got something like Lord of the Rings, but
yeah,
that doesn't mean that you can just build your fantasy movie
yeah,
and the audience is going to come watch it and you're going to make your money back. If you
yeah,
built this huge, even if you made this huge Skyrim movie,
yeah,
people are kind of trained to believe that the video game movies are going to suck and they're not worth watching.
yeah,
So even if you get people I mean, I don't know. You'd really have to wow people, I think, with the trailer, and
Yeah,
show them like this is it. Like this is like if you make a Morrowind movie, in the trailer you have to show the racism of Morrowind, and it's like
yeah,
it's not a fun thing to say, but that game, the Argonians and the Khajiits get treated like trash in that game.
yeah,
The lizard
yeah,
people and the cat people is what I'm talking about.
yeah,
The dark elves, which are like the native people to the land, hate everybody. They're racist
yeah,
against everybody.
yeah,
The high elves have a stick up their behind.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It,
the wood
yeah,
elves
it is
seem to
kind of a,
be the wood elves seem to be the most tolerant of everyone.
yeah, yeah.
Then
They're pretty,
yeah,
happy-go-lucky.
the Imperials are like the colonizers. Um,
Yeah,
and so like it's funny because the Imperials don't even really seem to have a problem with anybody.
no,
But at
yeah,
the same time they're
they're
like
just
also,
conquerors.
yeah, conquering people's lands and taking over people's lands.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, it's so but it is one of those games where like if you choose a certain race, you're going to be walking down the streets of some town and
yeah,
constantly getting harassed by people. Every person you pass is going to be like, ugh. You
yeah,
know, it's
yeah.
like,
You're treated differently.
ugh.
It is kind of cool, like um, starting the new game as a different race
Yeah.
and seeing like you'll go up to you like I've played as a dark elf and I'll go up to like a dark elf and he's like brother,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'm like oh like I remember walking up to this guy as a Khajiit like the cat
Yeah.
person and
And
like
they
he was like stern and curt with me,
yes. But
but
it's those little flavors of the world,
yeah,
of a
yeah,
fantasy world. It's the it's like in Lord of the Rings where like the dwarves and the elves don't get along. They've got history and beef, and they
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
show it. And there's that, and then the scene where like Legolas is basically like the guy's telling him like, hey, like, oh, you're a dwarf, I'd cut your head off if you weren't already so short. And
yeah,
Legolas pulls his bow on the guy and is like, I'll kill you before before your sword falls. And then
yeah,
like Gimli's like, oh,
yeah,
we're like comrades. Like
yeah,
he takes this thing seriously. Like he'll
yeah,
back me up
yeah,
even when he shouldn't. He'll back me up. Oh, okay.
yeah,
But yeah, so I don't know. I think yeah, that'd be a tough one though. How do you sell them on that one? Keep all the gnarly stuff that Morrowind had
yeah, well,
in
yeah,
a Morrowind movie.
yeah. You got to keep that stuff in, and then I think that you have to put a lot of effort into the like choreography, like the fight. You got to make it look cool.
Yeah,
Um, it's the one thing that I feel like Morrowind was missing, and I don't know, like maybe that would have taken away from it because it would have had to do like cutscenes or something like that. Um, but in a movie where it's like, dude, there
yes,
you could see like a fight scene that would just like blow your socks off, or
yeah,
even just being on a stilt strider that's basically just a giant flea,
yeah,
and like having a scene where like you get onto the stilt strider, and like you pay your fare and then it jumps to another city. It's like that
yeah,
could be a really cool looking scene, and that's definitely
yes.
something that would go right into the trailer.
Yeah. And like the
As
cool thing is, yeah, if you have a Morrowind movie, you make what they're able to do Morrowindish. So you could have like a group of like five guys just jumping up onto like rooftops, and like a guy jumping and like bow and arrow like pop 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 pop, pop like while flying through
yeah,
the air, you know?
yeah,
And some guy throwing like some spell or like casting like five, like ghosts at once and having them all like go out.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
because it's like that's what it was like playing Morrowind. I mean, it was the combat
yeah,
was archaic because of what the limitations basically of the time that it came out.
yeah,
And you'd swing and miss at stuff because it's doing it on a dice roll, and you can't. It looks weird because things aren't dodging, because then you'd have to add all these resources in for like having things dodge, and you
yeah,
can't do that. So
yeah,
but you could actually do that though, where you could have like a guy get into a fight and he's got like a dagger and he's swinging at the guy and the guy's just like like
Yeah.
like moving around.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you're showing like this is what your imagination was supposed to be doing while you're playing Morrowind, you know.
Yeah. This is
But
what it felt like to play
yes,
Morrowind.
yes, but like, but yeah, and I don't know. It just that was cool. It was cool jumping, being able to jump over like an entire city, just jump from one end of the city to the other. It
Yeah.
was cool
Yeah.
doing that, and you could show something like that in the movie, like that. There's characters that can do that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be cool. Man, I I really want to see it now. I
Yeah,
want to see
right.
it happen. They're gonna make some crappy Skyrim movie, and it's
A dragon.
yeah.
Oh my! Another dragon.
Maybe we should.
The movie you've been waiting for.
Yeah. Well, almost. Um, before I change the subject, I do want to
Yes.
point out. I don't know if this even counts. Shadows of the Empire would be a great movie, but it's also like, didn't it start out as a book? I don't know if that counts.
Shadows. Yeah. So Shadows of the Empire is a book that takes place it's it takes place basically between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it
So it
follows Dash
shows,
Rendar.
yeah, it shows some in between stuff of Empire Strikes Back that you don't really get to see,
Yeah,
because I think Dash Rendar jumps in during the Hoth battle. They made a video game about it it's on the Nintendo 64 and PC, but
yeah,
yeah, that I was hoping that Disney was going to do that movie, because I
yeah,
was like, oh, you're already replacing Han Solo and you're doing like face stuff for Luke Skywalker. You're having some other actor do it and, just youngifying him. You've got Carrie
yeah,
Fisher and you're just youngifying her.
yeah,
You're already got Tarkin going in there. Like, why don't you just make Shadows of the Empire?
yeah,
That would be the greatest thing ever.
yeah.
But they didn't do it.
No,
Instead, they
I don't know.
threw it away. I mean, they threw away all the old source material.
Yeah, that was a weird move. They did something that was like, all the books that were considered canon were
Yeah,
like written
yeah,
off as like, no, they weren't actually canon because
yeah,
they weren't actually written by George Lucas. And it's like, well, wait, like, why are
yeah,
you making them non-canonical now that George Lucas isn't in charge anymore? Like, that's a really weird move. Just make the movie.
yeah,
Like, you have material right there. Just do it. You know?
yeah. But yeah, Shadows of the Empire is like probably, I don't know if it's my number one pick, but it's either my number one or number two. Morrowind, I think, is my number one pick for make a movie out of a
Yeah.
video game. Shadows is my number two. I don't know why they haven't done it yet. Like, just go and
Yeah.
do it.
Speaking of video game movies, we did this thing. It was kind of for a contest. Like, we needed to make a movie that was within a certain time period. It was like 3-4 hours to make the movie, so we kind of did it like almost documentary style. It's called the Console Wizard, which I have on another channel, and it's you make builds, you build controllers, custom controllers, and the whole premise, it's just us kind of like talking to each other while you're trying to build this controller. Do you want to explain what the controller was, what it did?
Yeah, I mean, what I did was I took a Super Nintendo and a Sega Genesis controller,
Yeah,
and I combined them into one controller, which was just
yeah,
an arcade stick. We were playing Mario and Sonic at the same time, like using one controller to play Mario and Sonic on an actual
yeah,
Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Yeah, and
yeah,
I think we actually got through a couple levels too
yeah,
while
yeah.
playing like that.
It was cool. Like, to it's a single controller plugged into both consoles.
Yeah,
So yeah, you had like two TVs set up with like Sega Genesis and a Super Nintendo. Um, and or was it a NES or a Super Nintendo?
Super Nintendo.
Okay. And yeah, like, you'd move the joystick and both Mario and Sonic would move at the same time.
Yeah,
And I was having a lot of trouble controlling both of them. Um, but you didn't stop there. You kind of like, afterward, you've made other builds, you've made other custom controllers,
Yeah.
and so it got me kind of thinking like we did this thing, the console wizard, just because you were building the controller anyway, and so we kind of centered the little documentary style film on you building that. But if we wanted to make a console wizard movie that was a narrative,
Yeah.
and we didn't have to worry about like time constraints, we didn't have to worry about budget, we just want to make a good movie about the console wizard, maybe like not
Yeah.
even you, it's like a fictional character, the console wizard, who builds this stuff. um, what do we do? How do we do
Yeah.
that? What direction do we take it in?
Great question. So the movie opens like this. You've got the
I already
console
love
wizard. I'm assuming it's me playing the console wizard. You got the console wizard, sitting
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
kind of Clockwork Orange style.
Okay.
Only it's starting
Okay.
out. It starts out close, then
Yeah.
it backs up. And as it's backing up, you're getting more and more of like what it is I'm wearing. So maybe I'm wearing like the controller. It's like some super complicated controller that I'm wearing. Like I look
Yeah.
like Master Chief or something like that. The farther out you go,
Yeah.
and then at some point, like I put the Master Chief helmet on, and
Yeah.
like pick up the gun, and then like now I'm playing like with the controller, like moving my legs, and Master Chief is moving, and I'm like shooting the gun, and Master Chief is shooting, and like I basically am like Master Chief and me are like mirroring each other what we're doing.
Yeah. You're
and like
one.
and like that's what it is, and it's and maybe like the ending. Not to jump ahead to the ending, but maybe the ending is I'm gonna go into like a Halo competition that I'm trying to win, and I've only been losing the Halo competition, and so like this time I've like really decked out for the Halo competition to go and like win the Halo competition. It could be like any game, like that like would make sense, but
so
I think
it would be kind of like Wizard,
yes.
in that there's a video game competition.
Yes.
And you are not winning these competitions.
Yeah.
But you make a custom controller that makes you one with Master Chief.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you're the console wizard. And you enter the competition with your custom controller, and you're playing against people who are like using their thumbs.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
But then it could just be, I don't know what the antics would happen along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you could do kind of a MacGyver type thing where it's like, it could just be like you trying to make your way to the competition, and you keep having to like build something or fix something in order to like continue your journey. I don't know. I don't know if it's even a car that you're using. Like maybe it's some kind of like decked out bicycle that you built yourself because you're the console wizard. You like built like this electric bicycle that like goes faster. It's like a motorized or an electric bike. But like it would just kind of be this gimmicky thing that would give you an excuse to have to like MacGyver together something that broke on your electric bicycle.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't have to be an electric bicycle. It's just an example.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, I mean, if it is like something like, if the idea is just like this is a guy who builds video game controllers.
Yeah.
Then, the conflict should be in building the controller and in playing a game like the competition, and winning the competition. So there's like your main kind of conflict. Is that then?
So it's not a road trip film.
It could be a road trip film though, because it could be like where the competition is held. Could be somewhere where like you got to get there, kind of like the Wizard. And then the journey there is, and then it's maybe something where like you don't have the money to do it, so then you're going to different places, like building stuff for people or beating people at stuff, or doing fun things like that, where you're you're just challenging people to games, and beating them
Yeah.
along the way. It basically would follow the Wizards formula.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be like Wizard. I mean, alternatively, like a lot of it would just be taking place in your workshop, um, where it's because that would be kind of a cool way of showcasing some of the other stuff that you've built.
Yeah.
But then it's like that, your magnum opus is this Halo controller where like you become Master Chief and like you're struggling to make it work properly,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, like that could be kind of the struggle. That could be kind of like the obstacle you have to overcome.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, like there could be that typical 80s like I don't know if the controller works, but the competition's in 20 minutes, and then
Yeah.
like you go in
Yeah.
and you try it, and it's like, all right, we'll see, and then like in the middle of the competition is when you find out that it's working.
Yeah. It's not working at all. Yeah. um, yeah, I think it could be. I think it could be an interesting one. I like the idea of it being kind of like a road trip, though.
Yeah,
Maybe, of
yeah,
like kind of earning. You're trying to earn your way to the competition.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that could be kind of fun, and
You're gonna run into a kid with a mullet and has a
and a
power
power
glove.
glove. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it could be that. Like um, I do like kind of the idea of like you coming across these interesting scenarios where like yeah, I'll help you. Like I'll help you get along. I'll help you get to the competition, but you got to beat me first. And
Yeah.
like they have a controller, but you don't have one,
Yes.
and it's like, oh, you didn't bring your controller, and then you could be like, I don't need one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make one.
Yeah. I am the controller.
So why not? Yeah, but
Yeah.
like you could like go out and like
Yes.
find
Yeah.
stuff to make a controller with.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah.
That'd be so fun.
Just show me
Yeah,
like
you could do some
grabbing a
cool stuff.
toaster, some
Yeah,
kid's toy, like
some kid's toy. Just rip it right out of a kid's hand.
The thing is about the if you are whatever the end game is and the end controller is, you
Yeah.
can't reveal it until the end. Right?
Oh, okay.
Do you
Yeah.
agree with this?
So there's like scenes of
Because
you building something.
yes, like an Iron Man's type situation. But the end of
Yeah.
the movie is what
Yeah.
happens. And you could even pull like a Tarantino with Pulp Fiction where like someone steals it and they end up opening it and they're just like, oh
Yeah.
my god, and it's just like the light from it,
Yeah.
and then like you have to end up stealing it back from them, getting it back, so you can like
Yeah.
play the thing. But yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know how highbrow it would be.
It would not be. But man, it would be so much fun. Like there are
Yeah.
movies that Wizard's a good example because
Yeah.
Wizard is very much just a commercial for Nintendo,
Yes.
and specifically for Super Mario World 3. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but it's not a bad movie. It's actually pretty good. It's really enjoyable.
Yeah.
So it's like you kind of lean into that camp and just focus on being entertaining and make sure you tell a good story.
Yeah.
If the character is engaging, he's not too like I think that you could be a little bit campy when you're actually like building and you're trying to like put up a front.
Yeah.
And it's like I'll be able to beat you with this toaster, and like you could be
Yeah.
a little camp there, but then like
Yeah.
you keep it human outside of
Like
that, and
like
people will like it.
we're playing a racing game, and and I actually build like the steering wheel and the pedals and stuff, and you're like,
Yeah.
where's the 's? I'm like, here's the gas. And you're like, where's the brake? And I'm like, I won't be braking during this race.
Yeah. You use the actual steering wheel from your car.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be kind of fun. And you could, would it be full? Would it be like a full narrative where it's like this is just a produced movie, or would it have that quasi like Johnny Knoxville documentary sections in it where like when I'm doing a build, it's actually me doing a build? Do you know what I mean? Like it's
I know
not
what you mean.
scripted. It's not scripted. It's
Yeah,
like they're just like, hey, here's the game. Like
yeah.
just and then you can go around and like grab stuff and like then we're just going around grabbing stuff and like building it. But I don't know if that would. I don't know how well that would work to mix the two. I don't think it would actually.
I don't think it would work.
Yeah.
I think that that format works well for like hidden camera.
Yes.
But like for people who are in on it, I think it's got to be full narrative. I do like the idea of you doing builds that actually work.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not just using like your actual
Yes.
steering wheel or
No.
like a
That.
toaster, and it's a prop.
Yeah.
It's like
No.
no, like we're actually building the
Yes.
controllers and we're
I.
making them
Yeah.
work.
I would actually build if it actually happened, I would actually build all the controllers and make sure they were
Yeah,
actually working controllers. And while I'm playing, any footage that's
yeah,
being played, I would make sure it is me playing on the controller, getting the footage that I'm
yeah,
playing on the controller. Like this is no,
yeah,
this is actually happening, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And I
Because
could
it's
use a
cool.
toaster. I could use a
Yeah.
toaster.
They're like it's like it's like a Nintendo, and they're like need to build your controller. You're like, I need a 4 slot toaster. And I was like, why 4 slots? Like because it has 2 buttons. And you're like, you have one for each. It's like they got A and B on your toaster. Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
love the idea of you having a toaster controller.
I,
This is gonna happen. We're writing
I could
it.
do I could do it. I could make it. I could make a controller out of a toaster.
Yeah. And you have some delicious toast when you're done with your level, which is
Yeah.
that's so stupid. I love it. I want to see it. I'm like just the toaster thing alone is making me excited for like a console wizard movie. We should
Yeah.
totally write a script for
Right.
it.
Yeah. I could probably make a controller out of a toaster
Yeah.
and still have it function as a toaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh man. Yes. We need to make that happen.
Yeah.
Um, I think that those were some good pages. So until next time, I'll see you later, brother.
Little brother.